This episode of the Off-Road Podcast is sponsored by Warn, Power Tank, and Medical Gear Outfitters.
Off-Road Podcast, episode 314, unofficial use only.
Tonight, Aaron removes some rubber, Jeremy does some trimming, and Ben questions his vehicle choices.
Welcome to the Off-Road Podcast, the podcast about everything off-road. We cover the news, review products, and interview people in the off-road industry. I'm your host, Ben, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Aaron and Jeremy, along with our guest Greg Henderson with unofficial use only.
The Weekend Review is brought to you by Medical Gear Outfitters. What are you waiting for? Are you waiting to have a casualty on the trail? Check out medicalgearoutfitters.com to get straightened out. Medical Gear Outfitters has everything you need, whether you're going out for the day or traveling on a year-long expedition. Head over there to get off-road specific kits that meet all of your needs. And while you're there, make sure you use Off-Road Podcast for 10% off.
Well, boys, what you been up to, Aaron?
Well, since I got back from Moab and Colorado, I've been stuck with the honeydew lists. So not only do I have to put away all my camping and wheeling stuff, but we've got a family reunion happen on our property this coming weekend. So I've had to get the property cleaned up, a lot of tractor work. I had to stuff the parts, Nissan Titan parts truck off into a corner so it wasn't a big eyesore. It's still a big eyesore. It still has my spare engine in the bed of it. But yeah, working on the honeydew list. I'm trying to sell some stuff so I can fund the next portion of my build, which is obviously going to be the wheels and tires and brakes upgrade that I was talking about. And then I finally got to actually take my wife for a drive. We went out to dinner Saturday night. I got to take her for a drive in the truck. Now she rode with us almost the entire time I was wheeling, but in Moab and then even further exacerbated in Colorado, we got a lot of high altitude compared to where I'm at. And there's a lot of draw, or I'm not sure the word I'm looking for here, but the engine doesn't put out as much horsepower at those 10,000 foot altitudes. So I got to show her how much power the truck had here at sea level where I live, and she wasn't impressed. She doesn't get really impressed by that stuff. It still put a smile on my face though, that I could smoke the tires going around the corner and get up to speed quickly. She did say she liked the sound that it made though. So reminded her dad's truck that I believe it had it was a 77 Ford Highboy, and I believe it had a 351 Windsor in it. So
should have been a 351 modified.
It could have been an M. It could have been an M, but he swapped it out and put a different engine in it. So it could have been a Windsor. It was either a modified or a Windsor. But
yeah, the very first Greg that I ever built was a 77 Highboy. So it was an F350 Highboy. I put 40s on it with no lift, and it came with the 351 modified.
Very nice. Yep.
Which is funny because she hated how loud your LMTV was.
Well, but it's not.
It's a different.
This truck isn't. Yeah, this truck isn't loud. It just has really good rumble to it, so it sounds throaty.
And she might have not liked how the entire experience was loud on the LMTV.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, it wasn't just that it was loud, but it was also hot and uncomfortable and obnoxious, and everybody looks at you. So
I've got one of those right behind the camera.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's probably the loudest rumbling factory car you've ever heard.
They're not quiet.
Aaron, what is she going to think when you put 37s on your Nissan?
I don't think she really cares at this point.
So are you going to re-gear? Do you need to get re-gear? Did you figure
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into that yet, so we'll find out.
I'm sure you'll need to.
Well, we'll see. It's only 5 tire sizes up from stock. But that's all the torque from the V8 that I just swapped in there is going to provide all that extra torque. So it might not Might
Not
not
all the
need it.
torque. I don't
Not
know.
all the torque.
I still
Sure.
think you're gonna need it.
We'll see. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what have you been up to, Jeremy?
Well, I went ahead and trimmed the track bar brace. I think I talked about it last time that I was hitting the spring on it, so I went ahead and took
Yeah.
off an extra half an inch. I cut and it did the trick. So now I'm no longer contacting my spring. I come very close though, but hey, uh, having some sort of clearance is just good enough as long as there's something there, right?
Yep. For
um,
sure.
so I tested that out by just going out for a quick trip to Tahuya. I just took off one evening. Unfortunately, Tahuya doesn't do night wheeling. I wish they did. Otherwise, I'd love to go
Yeah.
there at night. But they don't do night wheeling, so I just went out after dinner, put the kids to bed, and thankfully the sun doesn't go down until about 9 o'clock. So I went out and got a couple hours out there.
Nice.
How about you, Ben? What have you been up to?
Well, so I was at my sister's house camping out this weekend, which was pretty fun. I so I replaced the foam mattress in the trailer, and I decided, you know what, I'm gonna put the other old foam mattress underneath it now to double it up because I'm a
Yeah.
side sleeper and my shoulder is bottoming out on the wood flooring, and it was like, oh man, this is uncomfortable. So I doubled it up and that fixed the problem. And it made actually getting out of the doors a little easier because you're not sitting on the door edge at all because the foam lifts you up high enough.
Are you sure it solved the problem when you're sleeping in one spot for a few hours?
I don't sleep very soundly, so I roll around all night. But no, it fixed it. I slept comfortably. And I actually got to sleep in a spot that was not shaded all day. So my solar box worked out perfect. I had fan
Oh,
full
good.
blast all night.
Good.
Though I do have all the stuff to improve the solar box, except for a new charge controller. So I'm waiting on that. I might order that this week, and then that will be that for the trailer until winter comes for the work for that. But I got an offer that I've wanted for a while. I'm really considering it. My older sister, I did my driver's test in her Toyota 4Runner. It's a third gen, a 2000, I think. Um, she bought it brand new with 0 or 13 miles on it, something like that. And she offered to sell it to me for $1,000 because I've been harping on her about it. Like, because she's not
Hmm.
driving it. It needs a new exhaust and um, get a gasket seal, or what is it? One of the upper gaskets, the manifold.
Yeah.
And
Or
it's
it needs an entire manifold that could be warped because it's
yeah,
probably
no,
cast.
yeah, it's a possibility, but I mean, even still, it's a third gen 4Runner, easy enough to work on. So I might go that route. Trying to convince my wife right now.
What is your plans if you buy it?
I don't know. I'm considering just leaving it stock for a while and using it for like basic camping trips with the family, and then daily driving it between the wife and I. Um,
I was telling him to take advantage of the high used auto market and sell his rig and put it all into the new one.
which is another consideration of doing.
That's not a bad idea. What I was thinking was if it costs you $1,000 to buy it and $1,000 to fix it, that's $2,000 you could put into your rig instead of having another rig and paying insurance for it.
Yeah. Well, so my wife Sarah's wanted something other than what she's had. She's wanted a 4Runner. We've almost bought a couple third gens before, but they just sold quickly. So this is kind of that chance. We could get rid of the Camry. We could get rid of the Expedition. Um, though we'd probably keep the Expedition for a little bit. Though we've been talking about selling that too. But I'm with my larger tires, and I haven't regeared the 4Runner yet. It struggles going over the pass.
Really?
Towing the trailer because 33s going over Snoqualmie, not fun with the little trailer. So
Hmm.
I'm thinking I'm gonna regear, but this will tide me over till I regear. And I'll have another 4Runner because I like lots of vehicles. Collect them
you
all.
should. You put a so do what I did. You put a V8 in there, and you won't have to worry about regearing. You just have a bigger engine.
Well,
You won't have any problems going over the pass.
Yeah.
Yep, horsepower and torque changes everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. I keep thinking about selling the 4Runner and buying something with a V8, but I spent so much.
You said you were rethinking your vehicle choices, but it doesn't sound like you're rethinking them. It sounds like you're just adding to them.
Yeah, adding to my problems of things to fix and work on.
Yeah,
I like doing that. I'm terrible.
Well, Greg, have you done anything off-road related this week?
This week? Yeah, I have an off-road park in the backyard. So, yeah, back in, I want to say it was 2010, I was really fortunate. They were working on 2 bridges on the street that I live on, and they were each 1 mile in either direction. So my property was perfect for them to store all their equipment. So while they were storing all their equipment, I also offered to take all of their scrap. So I ended up with almost 70,000 yards of dirt and 30,000+ yards of concrete, and I built an off-road training park in my backyard. So a lot of these vehicles that I build, one of the reasons why I'm kind of known as one of the guys, when I build something, it works. I build it and then it goes into the backyard and we test it and make sure everything works.
Nice.
Other than that, off-road related, I mean, I've got a JK sitting here next to me that I'm putting some Curry 60s on right now. And I took the Roxor out and did some off-roading not far from here. I had to go rescue somebody the other day. So I pretty much live off-roading. I think since Easter Jeep Safari, I probably put in, I don't know, close to 1,000 miles off-road just since then. So I try and stay active, but I also, work on other things. Like right behind the camera, there's a 1968 all original numbers matching Hemi Charger. And well, here, I'll give you a little walk around the shop. So there's the Charger.
Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Numbers matching all original, 30,000 miles.
Oh, baby.
We go over this way. There's the JK getting axles. There's a 55 Studebaker that I've been working on back in the corner. So, I try and play with stuff all the time. And I made sure to put the Power Tank logo right behind my head because, I love Steve and Tyler over at Power Tank. They're phenomenal people and make a phenomenal product. So I actually put it on every build that I do. If it's a Jeep, it gets Power Tank.
Very nice. Yeah, they're great guys. We love them too.
In fact, at Easter Jeep Safari, it was the first time I ever had somebody, there were some girls from one of the magazines and they needed a Power Tank. So I gave them one of my spares, and then Steve and Tyler had me autograph it, and they're clear coating it and it'll be at SEMA. So that was kind of a unique experience for me.
What's that engine behind your head?
It's just a stupid LS.
Okay.
You can send that right over.
So it is a stupid LS, and what that's going in, we were going to do a YouTube build and have fun with it. So it's just a regular LS. It's about 450 horse. But if you notice, you can see the front of the engine and the front of the headers. So the headers actually come forward. And that is going in an MG midget. So we're going to drop it
with a lot of Sawzall work, I assume.
Yeah, I think there will be almost no hood left at all. You'll actually be looking across the top of the engine. But the goal is to throw that in an MG midget with some old takeoff Rubicon tires and wheels that are sitting in the backyard.
Yes.
And just some other absolutely stupid things, and just beat it up and have fun. So I think it's the only good. It's the only good use for
all the cars.
Yeah.
Well, no. Hashtag stupid build.
Yeah, hashtag stupid build. But now I'm actually almost changing the idea because 2 weeks ago I bought a 1979 CJ5 because I needed a couple parts off of it. So I ended up with a CJ5 tub that is almost flawless, but I don't have a frame or anything else. So maybe that'll go into CJ5 as a rat rod.
Do it. That's much better than the midget.
Well, even if it goes in the midget, we'll probably break it in the first week, and then it'll have to go into CJ anyway.
There you go.
You'd just be cutting out the middleman.
Right.
Hey guys, we're looking to reach more listeners. We're going to start reading Apple iTunes reviews on air. If you hear yours, send us a message with your address, and we'll send you an Off-Road Podcast sticker. You can find all of our social media by just searching our name. Now, go hit that subscribe button.
We also want to thank our sponsor, Patriot Patch. Head over to patriotpatch.co and check out their selection of great patches, shirts, cleaning mats, signs, and stickers. You can also join the Patch of the Month Club for $15 and receive a patch, matching sticker, and artist proof each month. Boom, there's July's artist proof and sticker. Make treason lethal again. There it is. Now we're on the big screen. And then, of course, I got the patch here as well. So
is this
check
a
out
right-wing channel?
Check out Patriot Patch. They've got some great stuff.
The news is brought to you by PowerTank, the ultimate mobile onboard air system for performance, versatility, and reliability. They are your source for all air-related accessories. Check them out at powertank.com.
So the first article we have here is about
hang on one. I want to ask Greg one question about PowerTank. Do you have a favorite color of PowerTank, Greg?
No. So,
No?
I mean, I have a blue power tank, which is actually I gave away my blue power tank. So right now I think I have a red and a black and a yellow. But favorite color usually is whenever I do a custom build, I custom color the tank to the build. Because if you're painting the whole vehicle, you might as well paint the accessories. But I mean, color doesn't really matter. I don't care if you get a pink one. Power tank is still a phenomenal tool that works on any trail, even when you go to the beach to fill up the kid toys. So
yeah,
I can never say enough about power tank. It's a really, really good product.
I think Ben used one to fill up an air mattress one time.
Yeah.
No, I used it to fill up, those air chairs where you got to spin around to catch air. And you
also their little blowgun. This is probably one of the wickedest blowguns I've ever owned.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, you need to get it. It also comes with an extension that attaches onto it, and I use it to sweep the floor.
Yeah.
But this air nozzle just decimates all other air nozzles. So if you don't have one, you definitely need to go out and buy one.
I like that. All right, we can talk about the news now.
All right, so the first article we have here is about the Chevy Colorado Trail Boss. So it's a new off-roading package that they're coming out with. So they claim it's going to be in between the Z71 and the ZR2. And so basically you get everything that's in the Z71, a 1-inch suspension leveling kit, 2 more skid plates, but obviously they're factory skid plates, so you might want to replace those anyway. Some 17-inch ZR2 style wheels, an updated front bumper without the aero dam, and then some red exterior accents.
This is kind of an odd package.
Yes, it is.
It's weird that they tried to even slot anything between the ZR2 and the Z71. It's strange.
I thought so too. I remember, didn't we talk about it on the show a while back when they were just kind of teasing it, and we were hoping that it was one step beyond
something
the ZR2?
Awesome.
Yeah. Instead of just, some different trim and different wheels that you're probably going to replace anyway, and different 2 additional skid plates that you're probably going to replace anyway, and a 1-inch suspension leveling kit that you're probably going to replace anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, does it say who the manufacturer of any of those parts are? Like, is it kind of a package like the one that AEV did for them, or is it, a
I don't.
complete new vendor?
I think it all comes from Chevrolet. I don't think it is an outside manufacturer at all.
Yeah, they didn't tout anything like well, it didn't even talk about new shocks. But yeah.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed. That's all I'm going to say.
Yep. Well, then let's talk about Broncos.
Yay, Bronco news yet again. Welcome to the Bronco news episode.
Just about almost every week, it seems like there's something new to talk about with the Broncos. And I don't know if they just do that on purpose, if they just have something every single week so that they're always at the trending news level talking about the new Ford Bronco. But
Somehow I
this one
don't
is
think
not
this
good
one's
trending
intentional.
news. No. So they're having some top issues with the hard tops. Apparently, there's a snakeskin-like pattern that's showing through the plastic top. They're having headliner separation, warping around the screws that fasten the roof to the chassis. There's some raw unfinished edges that are decomposing. So and apparently these things are happening to these hard tops after the owners have had the rigs for a while. It's not like they were delivered poorly. They're deteriorating after they've owned them. And I don't think people have had the Broncos out for very long. So
No, they've only been out for a couple months, but
yeah.
coming from the car industry and from the manufacturer side and being here in Detroit where most of them are made, anytime there's a new generation, anything, doesn't matter, if it's a Jeep or a Bronco or, a Chevy, first generation, you're always going to have in the first 6 months to year issues, because that's how we learn. That's how they learn. So I think that they'll improve. But I have some Bronco news. Last weekend I was up in the UP and I got to pull a Bronco out of a ditch.
There we
one
go.
of these one of these brand new ones?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks old. The girl that was driving it was, I don't know, she couldn't have been 20 yet. Her dad just bought her this brand new Bronco, and she decided to go off-roading with the boyfriend, and literally they got stuck in like 3 inches of mud. So it was pretty amusing.
That is very amusing.
Now, when you say 3 inches, where do they even bother putting it into 4-wheel drive?
Yes.
Oh no.
And it was the big Bronco, not the Bronco Sport, right?
It was the big Bronco.
Okay.
But it was, she was in a ditch, everybody's familiar with an average ditch.
Yeah, Ben is very familiar with ditches. He almost seeks them out on almost every four-wheeling trip that we go on. They're a magnet.
Oh,
yes.
perfect. So this road is in a forest section, and it's called an unimproved road. And here in Michigan, we have unimproved roads, and basically there's no county support for an unimproved road. It's a road, it's there, but it's not maintained. So unlike a dirt road, some of them can get pretty gnarly. And it did have a little ditch on the side, and apparently she was going too fast and got a little crooked. So when she went into the ditch, she wasn't in the ditch straight, she was canted. And it just couldn't grip. It couldn't get traction. It was, kind of a clay mud. But yeah, it was pretty comical because I didn't have any tow straps with me because I wasn't going off road. I wasn't doing anything exceptional. I was in our Dodge Ram 1500 that I just towed my camper with, but I had some string trimmer line from my weed whip in the bed. So I used about 30 pieces of string trimmer line around my tow point and then an under part of her chassis because her recovery points were not very safe. She had those big giant donglies that somebody buys aftermarket that I wouldn't use for anything. So pulled her right out and I was on my way, but it was just comical that really nice Bronco. And I'm sure the Bronco could have driven out under its own power. It's just the driver was unaware of how to do what she was doing. And I wasn't there to teach her what to do. I was there to go on my way and assist.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was comical.
Go prepared with Warren Industries. They produced the first recreational winch in 1959 and lead the industry with their dedication to quality and reliability. When you dig yourself in deep, make sure you have the right tools to get yourself out. Get Warren equipped and go where others can't. Now, let's get ready for adventure and head into our main topic.
Well, we want to welcome you, Greg, to our show. Oh, yeah, Ben's showing off a picture. Ben, you're muted, by the way. There's Ben in one of the many ditches that he's enjoyed in his off-roading career. We want to welcome you to the show, and we want to hear more about what Unofficial Use Only is all about. But before we get to the shop, we're going to talk a little bit about you. So
only bad things you found on the internet, right?
Only the bad thing.
Yeah.
Well,
so go ahead, Ben.
We've got to start with my favorite thing, the Fast 5 facts. All right, new or old vehicle?
Are you asking questions?
Oh yeah, I'm asking questions. So
okay.
These I'll let me explain this to you. So Fast 5 facts is it's on the fly. You've had somewhat of a little bit of a chance to look at show notes, but so these are quick answer one. So new or old vehicle?
Old.
Summer or winter camping?
All.
Rock, sand, snow, or mud?
Rock, sand, snow.
Favorite vehicle brand?
Jeep.
And favorite tire?
Favorite tire? My favorite tire you can't buy right now, so I'm going to say BFG.
What tire can't you buy right now that you would have said?
Pitbull tires.
Okay.
The Pitbull rocker radial. I've never had an issue. I've driven probably 200,000 miles off-road with them in the last 15 years, and I've never had a failure or a problem, and I always have traction. It's a niche tire. It costs too much money, but it's always been there and never failed on me. Aside from that, BFG, definitely a phenomenal tire, whether it's the all-terrain or the mud terrain. So there's my favorite tire. Sorry, that wasn't a fast answer.
No, that's fast enough.
No, that's all right.
That's we like when there's a little bit of an explanation behind it.
Yes. Yep. Sometimes an explanation is needed. So why don't you tell us how you got started off-roading?
Wow, that's a long story. So just like everybody, red-blooded American male, throwing mud was cool. And when I became a young adult, I was actually a union bricklayer. And as a daily driver, I picked up a 1977 Ford F-350 Highboy. And very shortly after having that truck, I started getting four-wheel and off-road and all the different magazines. And I decided that I wanted big tires. So I found a set of 40-inch groundhogs and put them on without lifting it. And that just kind of started my love for off-roading. As that transitioned and when I was a kid, I did dirt bikes and stuff too. But as it transitioned further along, I drove that truck every day and I got 3 miles to the gallon. So eventually I bought a Jeep Wrangler as a daily driver, thinking that it would be a small, fun, economical vehicle compared to my truck. Started to modify the Jeep Wrangler over and over and over because it's the most customizable vehicle in the world. And after, I think it was stage 3 or 4, I ended up starting to get in magazines. So I'd show up at places, the magazine guys would take pictures. John Kappa was one of the first ones, take pictures of my rig and put it in the magazine. So I got stoked about that. All the while I was still a union bricklayer. I did bricks and blocks and stonework. And then my big launch into the off-road industry came late 2006, early 2007. A company called American Expedition Vehicles moved into Michigan. And I was hired I was kind of the head shop tech, head welder, head fabricator. I ran the shop, and I was there for a bunch of years. I wore a lot of hats while I was there. I was even in sales, and I wrote all the instructions, and I was head of tech, and did a lot of things. But that really launched me in my off-road career. And then my son got hurt, so I stopped working as much. Started moonlighting a little bit here at home in my own shop for extra cash. And eventually AEV and I parted ways. Parted on good terms. I got a really fat severance, which was really good because they wanted me to sign a non-compete. But I still love AEV. I love what they do. I love the fact that, they're a big name company, but they build things just like the OE builds them, and to the same quality or specifications. They even do all the durability testing and everything else. So it's not just off-road parts. There's actually some engineering behind it. After that, I worked at a couple other companies. I even went down to Florida, and I was the COO of a company down there for a little bit. And then finally, I just decided, screw it. I would start my own little shop. And I did. I started on official use only. I build a lot of SEMA rigs. So I build rigs that end up at SEMA and get a lot of attention, but then they work too. I take them off road and beat the piss out of them, if I can swear on your podcast. But I love what I do. But unofficial use only, I don't pigeonhole myself to just Jeeps, right? I'll do a Jeep, I'll do a Toyota, I'll do whatever, and not just off road. Like right behind me, there's a $3 million muscle car. It's a one of one. So, I'm just passionate about things with engines and tires, and I specialize in off-road, and I specialize in the off-road market, and I love it. But, I don't pigeonhole myself into anything distinct.
So were you there for the Brute conversion? Were you part of that?
Oh, yes, I was. I personally built more Brutes than anybody else on the planet.
That was
Nice.
I'm so glad that you were there for that, because that's been one of my favorite things, and I'm glad that kind of helped stem bringing back what we know now today as the JT. Because I've seen guys where they've kind of hobbled them together themselves, but the Brute conversions just made it so more realistic.
Yeah, well, and the Brute conversion, you could do it a couple different ways. The end user or the customer could buy it themselves and do it in their own garage. It was actually a fairly easy kit. Or they could have it professionally done at a shop or even at AEV. Hence why I built more than anybody on the planet, because I was the head shop tech at AEV during those years. So, in Montana, they built a handful of them, but here in Michigan, we built the bulk. So I think I've got over 21 TJ conversions under my hat. And, as we built them, we learned and evolved. And that's why one of my vehicles is called Frankenbrute. I built it as a way to help my son, but I overbuilt it too. So Frankenbrute, and if you Google it, you'll find it. But it's basically a Brute conversion, but way overdone. So I made the frame thicker. I used axles that AEV wouldn't. I did a lot of things that AEV wouldn't, and I built it while I was there. And it's gone through multiple iterations and changes. In fact, right now it's in 25,000 pieces because we're rebuilding it again, mostly because I rolled it on my birthday, November 18th, and we had to fix it.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I dislocated my shoulder, and I'm not as young as I once was. But no, the Brute conversion is great. Yeah, so that was when I very first built it. And that picture was taken by Vern Simmons, who was with JP Magazine at the time. But that's the Frankenbrute, and it has a 1-inch lift. It's a Dana 60 front axle, a Dana 70 rear axle, Atlas transfer case, onboard air, onboard welder. It's only a 1-inch lift in 37s. And Now in its current configuration, it still has a straight six, but it's a 5.1 liter straight six that makes 450 horse naturally aspirated.
Very nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I love the Brute, and you can do it with so many other things too, right? Like I wish somebody would bring me a JT and let me turn it into a two-door and kind of go after that Brute look.
Yes.
So going back to your Highboy, so you said you put 37s on it, or sorry,
40s.
you put 40s on it right away. What else did you do to it?
Well, so I bought, I think I bought 4 trucks because I wanted to build one really nice one. So I bought 4 different trucks. 3 of them were F350s and one of them was an F150, and they were all 1977. And then I took the best parts from all of them and kind of built one really nice truck. And I even kind of went a little crazy because one of the trucks had dual tanks under the bed, and the 77 150 had the single tank behind the seat. So
Yes.
I used all 3 tanks.
Why not?
Right. And then it had the, it had a divorced MP205 transfer case, and it had the C6 transmission. So it was really bulletproof. And it had, the F350 Highboy had hydraulic assist steering, which is where like PSC and Redneck Ram, that's where they all derive from, is that original Ford stuff. So it had all these great components. The motor ran great. So we did all the body work, everything else, cleaned it up. And then I was reading magazines, and I saw these guys with these 37s and 40-inch tires. And mind you, this is like 2002. So,
Yeah.
40-inch tires in 2002 were huge.
Huge. Yes.
And I actually found them on Craigslist, because Craigslist was still a thing back then. I found them on Craigslist already mounted to wheels, and they were like $500. And I couldn't turn down giant tires for $500.
Nope.
And then the best part was they were brand new. So the guy had bought these tires and wheels, and then they wouldn't fit on his truck. So they just sat, and then he sold them for pennies. So I just broke out the Sawzall, and I made the fenders way bigger. And then I took the extra time with a hammer and dowel, and I rolled the edge over and, made it look like it was kind of factory-ish. And yeah, that was my daily driver. And it really did. And I did put a Weiland supercharger on it. But yeah, that thing got 3 miles to the gallon, and it ran premium. And eventually it was time. Now, mind you, at the time I made really good money, right? So as a stonemason in Michigan, I was making 140 to 160 a year. So I made really good money. So I didn't care about the gas money, right? I was a young kid. I was in my early 20s, and who cares? I was having fun. Then I met my wife, and my wife said, get something economical. And that ended up being a 1998 red TJ on 31s.
Yeah. Economical.
And it got great gas mileage. It got like 18. But that went downhill really fast too.
I'm sure it didn't take long before parts started to get them bolted to that.
Yeah.
So what are you driving now? It's probably a lot of rigs, right?
Like things that I personally own or things that I get to drive?
What do you personally own? What's your daily wheeling rig?
Right now my daily wheeling rig, aside from Frankenbrute, but Frankenbrute's torn apart right now, daily would be my 2020 Mahindra Roxor that I built for SEMA in 2019. Did a Diesel Freaks tune on it, no lift at all with 37-inch tires. I widened the axles to 64 inches. And it'll do 85 miles per hour down the highway. It gets 40 miles to the gallon, and it goes off-road anywhere. Like at Easter Jeep Safari, I brought that, and I don't know if any of you guys have done Moab Rim, which is my favorite trail in the world. I did Moab Rim in the Mahindra Roxor without ever sitting in the driver's seat, which you shouldn't do. I don't advise it. Don't anybody ever do that. It's dangerous and dumb. But somebody bet me that the Roxor couldn't climb the hill without a driver in it. So I stood next to it and just steered the wheel, and it went all the way up the hill. And again, don't do that. Bad.
Don't do that.
Professional drivers
Don't-
only.
Don't do that. Ben, do that.
Right. But honestly, the Mahindra Roxor, and I know it's, there's a lot of history back and forth with Mahindra and Jeep, and I know Jeep and FCA keep suing Mahindra and they keep losing, and but Mahindra's had the license to build Jeep since 1947, so they've had it longer than any other company that's ever built a Jeep, and they got authorization to build the Roxor here from the president of Jeep. They just had to change the grill, and they did it, and then they started to get sued. And even though I'm a Jeep guy and Mahindra is a tractor company, I really like that little Mahindra. It's bulletproof. It's got a great frame. It's got a solid steel body, a tractor diesel under the hood, and a 5-speed stick shift. It just eats.
Those aren't street legal, are they? Right? They're considered a side-by-side or a UTV.
Well, yeah. So it's sold as a side-by-side, and depending on the state that you live in, you can or cannot make it street legal. Mine in Michigan, you can make them street legal. Side-by-sides are street legal in a lot of areas, but as long as you make the appropriate modifications in Michigan, like I had to add a real windshield. So I took a YJ windshield, bolts right on it. So I bolted on a YJ windshield with glass that I bought from Quadratech, and I had to put turn signals on it, and that was it. It's street legal in Michigan. Then I had to go, because it's a side-by-side, I had to go to the Secretary of State, and I had to prove that I made the modifications. And once I proved that I made the modifications, they issued me a title and a license plate. So now I can take it anywhere in the country. So it all depends on the state you live in, and there's sites. There's a place called Dirt Legal, which is really interesting to off-road people. If they go on Dirt Legal, I think it's dirtlegal.com or something like that. You'd have to Google it. Dirt Legal is a website that deals with the legality of certain off-road aspects, and they do offer a way to make side-by-side street legal, whether you have a Razor or a whatever it is. You can pay their lawyers a fee, and they will essentially give you a plate and registration from like South Dakota, because in South Dakota there's no rules. So, like, I know it's skirting the laws one way or another, but it's, as off-roaders, we're supposed to all help each other. So if somebody out there in La La Land needs a way to make something street legal, they have a team of lawyers that dedicate themselves to that. So, whether you're an old rig or you're in a state that doesn't allow certain things, there's probably a legal way around it. And I don't know anybody there. I've never even talked to anybody there, but I've learned about it, and I know other people use it. So it's just information.
Yeah, it's
so the Mahindra Roxor is probably my go-to off-road rig right now, unless I'm doing something gnarly, like if I'm going really deep backwoods because I heat with wood, I'll take my Deuce and a half. So I've got a 1969 Deuce and a half with a multi-fuel engine. So if I'm going out to the middle of nowhere, that's usually what I'll take, because it'll run on anything. In fact, I've driven it from Michigan to Florida and Michigan to Maine and Michigan to Moab, filling up at McDonald's. So
wow.
There's always ways around certain things, but my Deuce and a half, it pretty much goes through anything too. So, and it's just stock, just like they built it in the military. Those would be my two biggest off-road rigs that I own right now, other than Frankenbrute, which literally is in 10,000 pieces.
Do you have a most embarrassing moment on the trail you want to share with us?
Well, there's a lot of them to choose from, because we all make mistakes. I've done stuff where I've hurt my vehicle when it was, a stupid mistake or come up with the wrong thing. But probably most embarrassing ever, I was in Utah, in Moab, because I go to Moab a lot, probably usually 3 to 4 times a year. I was on a trail and I rolled off the edge, and luckily the vehicle did a full 360 before it landed the next spot down, and hurt the vehicle really bad. I blew out all the tires, broke both axles, lots of damage. Luckily it landed in a creek, and it was a very shallow creek, but it landed in a creek because when I got out of the vehicle and had to sit down and have a cigarette and let my nerves calm myself, I got to sit in the creek to wash away the soiling that I had done to my pants when I went over.
No.
So not a good, you shouldn't wear khakis because they stain really bad, and sitting in the river doesn't fix it.
Which trail was that?
It was Cane Creek.
Cane Creek. So we tried to do Cane Creek about 10 days ago, and it was not unpassable, but it was so rough and everything. It was beating us up. We turned around and left after an hour driving it. Apparently there had been, from all the heat that we had out west, lots of snow melt, which led to lots of flooding.
Oh, they're having massive flooding right now.
tore it
A couple of my friends, massive flooding in Moab right now. A couple of my friends were posting videos earlier today of some of the creeks just full washout. But if you've done Cane Creek Trail before, are you familiar with Hamburger Hill?
No, we didn't. So that we were trying to get to Hamburger Hill to find out if we could even make it up Hamburger Hill, but we turned around after an hour. So we came across the guy as we were getting there. He was leaving. He was in a Toyota Land Cruiser 80 series, and he said that it took him 2 days to get to Hamburger Hill and back out in his Land Cruiser 80 series.
Oh, wow. Yeah, Hamburger Hill, like back in 2010, you could almost drive a cop car all the way to Hamburger Hill. But after 2010, I don't know if it was just the weather or the rigs, because you guys from this podcast, I'm sure you understand that over the past few years, probably the last 10 years, rigs just keep getting bigger and bigger. People who have never been off-roading go out and buy a brand new Jeep, and then put $50,000 to $100,000 in it, and everybody's got to have 40s, and everybody's got to have this and 1 tons. And a lot of them aren't really off-roaders, so they build these giant capable rigs and go out and really tear up the land. Because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know that you need, a little bit of momentum will carry you over an obstacle. Instead, they hit the obstacle, they stop, and then they floor it and just start churning stuff up. I think that may be what has happened to Hamburger Hill, because you used to be able to drive over it on a TJ on 31s, with lockers. And now the ledge, so you go up Hamburger Hill, and right at the top of it, there's this gnarly ledge that pitches you towards the creek. It's a good 5-foot climb now, and it's very, very off camber and pretty sketchy. But I see that a lot in a lot of the trails I do around the country, where trails that 10 years ago were very passable with a Toyota Hilux, now you need 40-inch tires or bigger, and you probably should know how to drive because the trails have just gotten dug out really bad. So I think it's a really important thing in this industry to promote conscious wheeling and helping teach all these new people kind of the right way to do things, even if you feel uncomfortable telling somebody that that's not how you're supposed to do it, that it's better on your vehicle and better on the environment if you do it this way. But I think as off-road advocates, we should all try and push that a little bit to definitely teach people proper recovery and the safe way to do things versus just tearing up the land, because the tree grabbers are pushing for us not to be able to go off-road. We have to step up and, as a unified off-road group, really help to keep these trails open. And education's the best way to do it. that was a really long answer on what's my most embarrassing thing.
Are there any places that you haven't gotten to wheel yet that you really want to get to?
I really, really want to wheel Australia.
Don't we?
There was, in fact, I was just on another off-road show, and 52 years ago, there was a group of guys that took 3 rigs from east to west across Australia, which was an epic thing 50 years ago, to take basically stock Jeeps, and they were stock Australian Jeeps, so nothing that was ever built here. And they crossed the largest desert in the world. So what was it, like almost 4,000 miles from end to end, off-road. I think something like that would just be amazing to do. Just absolutely amazing. I know they recreated it a couple years ago. I just got to watch a little snippet of one of those videos where BFG and Warren and Factor 55 and a few other companies all sponsored a few guys to do that trip, to recreate that trip in more modern day vehicles. And I think that would be, kind of the pinnacle of something to do off-road, where you're out there for 2 weeks, and just an epic adventure like that would be amazing. Because most stuff, in the US, I've been to most of the states. I've done probably most of the parks and hardcore wheeling spots in the United States. And I've done Canada, and I've done some stuff in Mexico, but never been able to wheel overseas. And I think Australia would be probably one of the best. I think South Africa would be great too, but with the economic turmoil there, it's just, I don't know if it's worth it to try and make a pilgrimage that way.
Yeah, India has been one that I've considered because of Dennis from Terraflex coming on and talking about how crazy it is over there.
Yeah, I actually have I have a rig here. It's right outside the door that I'm building for a client in India. But yeah, India would be amazing. And Dennis does talk really highly of it. So I think that would be cool. Anywhere that we're not used to, anytime you get to see something new and exciting, like Canada, I know we can't cross right now because Michigan, it's very easy to cross anytime, but Canada has some beautiful wheeling that is amazing to do. But yeah, I'd love to try something completely different and out of the norm.
Well, let's talk about unofficial use only. Well, we know you're in Michigan, so what's the company all about?
Really, it's just, I like to build stuff. And again, it doesn't matter if it's an old muscle car or a Jeep. I specialize in Jeeps, and I specialize in off-road. I built an off-road park in the backyard to teach people proper recovery and what their vehicle's capable of. But probably the stuff that gets me noticed the most is when I do the SEMA builds like Path Killer, which you're showing right now. So that's a 2016 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon with no lift and 37-inch tires. And I, kind of grafted an old Cherokee front end on it. And the yellow one behind it is also 2016 with a 1967 Gladiator front clip grafted into it. And that's not one of the fiberglass kits. That's all steel. So, that one's the YJL for Quadratec. That's their SEMA show car this year. It's entered in the Battle of the Builders, and it'll be there. It's actually outside the door right now too, because we're getting ready for stage 2 to prep it for SEMA. Stage 1 was the cosmetics. Stage 2 will be the heartbeat. And so I try and take things and blend them with old, or just do something unique instead of just bolting on parts. I understand bolting on parts is important. In fact, most off-road shops do way more bolting on parts because it's much more profitable. I like to do the creative because it gets the juices flowing, and it lets me think and be creative and, do something that nobody else has done. And that kind of makes me tick. I know it's not as profitable. I know I don't make that much money. But I absolutely love what I do. I'm
Definitely
not the best businessman in the world, but I get to have fun every day.
So you've shown us some front end conversions and things like that. What all do you do? Do you just do some front end stuff, or you mentioned that you put on bigger tires with a little bit of lift and also changing the heartbeat of, like, so I'm assuming engine swaps. Do you just do basically everything from tip to tail and
Yeah,
suspension,
tip to tail.
engine? Yeah.
Like I'm the guy that wrote the instructions for the AEV Hemi kit. I didn't design the kit, but I wrote the instructions and helped with a lot of the fabrication. I am not the guy that's going to make your engine run, right? So like the LS behind me, don't ask me to take it apart and put it back together, right? I have people that do that, friends that do that. I've never opened an engine, but you can give me a JZ motor and tell me to stick it in a smart car and I'll make it fit. I also, I learned a lot of stuff from some very, very good guys. My dad was into cars and very well known and respected. And a lot of the lunatic fringe guys, so the guys that used to do all the creative stuff for Jeeps, all those engineers became very good friends. In fact, some of them still come over to the shop, and I get to learn stuff every time they're here. So I hand build my own suspensions. A lot of these rigs like Frankenbrute. And I hate to say it this way because I love Terraflex, but my mid arm will outflex some Terraflex long arms. But I can also run it down the street at 140 and drive it like a drift car. So, and I know that's not for everybody, but I do. Sometimes, you just want to build something different. And I use a lot of Terraflex parts. I love them. I love the guys over there to death. So I'm not knocking them when I say that. It's just, there's always a way to push the envelope. I like to push the envelope. So I'll hand build a suspension. I'll fab my own motor mounts. I'll put an engine in something where it's not supposed to be there. It's mostly custom fab. So whether it's a front end conversion or taking a 3.6 engine out and putting in a pissed off 6-cylinder, straight 6 for SEMA. The thing that I'm most proud of with what I do is I try to make them aesthetically pleasing. So I try and make them look right and not look secondhand. Also, I want them to function. Path Killer, like I said, it was 100% bone stock suspension underneath, but it fit 37-inch tires. And I could go out and wheel with all those Yahoos with their 42-inch tires and show them up. So it's not just about being creative. You also have to be functional. And I like my stuff to be 100% functional. They're not trailer queens. They're not to take pictures of, drive them 100 feet off the road, get your pictures, put them back on a trailer. Path Killer, I have photos and you can probably find them on the internet. I used that to tow an 8,000-pound rig back and forth across the country, and then I wheeled them both. So
wow.
That's a semi I did for a customer. I stretched his semi 80 inches in the middle and 40 inches at the back so that he could fit the JK I built on it and tow his rig. But fully functional, right? And the fun part with that semi, he has less money in that entire semi, including the conversion, than going to the store and buying a new F450. So that semi is a 2016 Volvo. And he bought it at auction. I think he paid 30 grand for it. And then he paid another 35 grand for the frame stretch and flatbed conversion. So, he's like 70 grand into that whole truck that gets 16 miles to the gallon and hauls all his stuff. So way cheaper than buying a F450.
Does he get that 16 while hauling that trailer?
Yes.
That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, fully loaded like that, his average is 14 to 16.
Well, you say fully loaded. That's the load behind that is very minimal compared to what it's capable of hauling.
Yeah.
So that rig is capable of hauling well more than 500,000 pounds, and he's with the Jeep and the travel trailer, he's probably got less than a 20,000 pound load, maybe 22,000 pound load. So the truck doesn't even know that stuff's behind it.
For our listeners, it's a fifth wheel attached to a semi truck with a Jeep on the flatbed portion.
Yep.
Yeah,
and
a 3-axle fifth wheel with slide outs galore.
Yeah, and pictures
and that fifth wheel's a toy hauler. But that fifth wheel I think is 44 feet, and then the semi is, like I said, in the middle it's stretched 80 inches, and then I added another 40 inches of tail to hold the fifth wheel section. But he just got done with a trip. He left Michigan, drove to Yellowstone, then he went down to Arizona, then to Moab, then Colorado, Tennessee, and back home. So him and his wife spent 5 or 6 weeks making a loop around the United States in that rig.
Very nice.
And when you buy a semi, for a listener or even you guys, if you buy one of those old semis, as soon as you remove the commercial hitch and put like a fifth wheel hitch on it, it's no longer a commercial vehicle. Now it's an RV as long as it has a toilet. So he's got a little tiny Encino toilet that's under one of the back seats, and it's considered an RV. So he doesn't need any special licensing or anything else.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So I think I know the answer to this because you've talked about a lot of big tires with very minimal or no lift, but what is your favorite tool?
My favorite tool?
Yeah. Like to use?
I've got a lot of favorite tools. My favorite tool will probably surprise you because I do all this low lift, big tire thing. But my favorite tool,
always willing to go get it,
is super old school.
Oh.
So my favorite tool is a body hammer.
Yeah.
And a dowel. So, and if you look around my shop, you see, you've seen the caliber of rigs that I build, and everything is hand built here in the building. I don't have any fancy tools. I don't have a plas table. I have a plasma cutter, but I don't have a plas table. I don't have power hammers. I don't have anything like Path Killer, the XJ front end. I used this, and I probably hit each one of those fenders no less than 60,000 times with this. So those front fenders took me 2 days. Each fender took a day, and I hand shaped those with a hammer and dowel.
Wow.
So, if I charged enough for my work, if I charged like other people who do custom builds, if I charged the same as them, I could afford those fancy tools. But I don't. I charge that kind of money for what I do, which I know is stupid, but again, bad businessman. I really enjoy doing it. So, I make enough to survive, and I make enough to keep my kids fed, and but growth is an issue because I'm not good at growth. But yeah, if I had some of those fancy tools, if I had a plas table and a power hammer and an English wheel and some of that stuff, what took me 2 days on that build would take me like 4 or 5 hours. But I guess I kind of do stuff old school. I do it the old way because that's how I learned. And I don't have the budget to buy a $30,000 plas table or, a $10,000 English wheel. So I just do it with a hammer.
I've not been fortunate enough to see your rigs in person. Any of the what I call the front end mod ones. But I've met people that have, and they say they are the cleanest of builds. So I mean, just the pictures I see, you don't see any weird blends or anything. It looks factory, and it's
Yeah,
absolutely
well, and that's what I like to do. I want it to look like it came from the factory. And even when you take it apart, like each one of those builds, you could unbolt that front end and bolt it onto another Jeep. So it's not like things are welded in place or anything. I try and build it just like the factory would have built it, or just like a prototype would be built. That way you could, so if Path Killer or the yellow Chief, if one of those got rear-ended, you could literally unbolt the front end and bolt it onto another Jeep. In fact, Path Killer, we did a test study because I was going to try and sell those as a conversion kit. And you could take that front end off and put it on another Jeep in about 35 minutes. And I did look at manufacturing those and selling them, but it was almost $500,000 in tooling costs and manufacturing costs to be able to stamp those out of steel. And then I would have sold the kit for, $4,500, and I just couldn't afford that. I wasn't going to get that kind of a loan. I mean, same thing with the YJL that I just did for Quadratech. I'm looking at manufacturing that front end, which is basically just a grill replacement and a new bumper. And the tooling costs just for that grill are very close to $200,000 to make it just like the factory would make it. I've even talked with Jeep about that, and I'm talking with the licensing team at Jeep so that it's an officially licensed Jeep product. But again, it's very daunting and I know it takes money to make money, but sure, it's a very scary proposition to go get a loan for $250,000 and hope that people are going to buy it.
Totally understand that. Yeah, I had a 2-door JK, and I had a Wagoneer when you built the Brute, or what I don't remember what you call the yellow one.
It was I just called it the Chief.
Yeah, the Chief. And I had the old school Chief grill and all that, and I was just like, I want a Jeep again and do that.
So for that one, the Wagoneer, which all that sheet metal basically comes off a Wagoneer, I had to essentially narrow that 9.5 inches to make it fit the J. So like if I opened up my Dropbox for you to give you some pictures, that hood ended up being, I think that hood was 16 pieces of steel after I cut it up, and then I had to weld it all back together. And the grill was, when I cut it up, I think the grill was 8 pieces of steel that then had to be welded back together and smoothed out. And then the fenders on that, if you look, I raised them a lot compared to what a Wagoneer would be. So I took those fenders, so the black part, that's actually all steel. It's a bolt-on. So I took the factory original wide body ones and reshaped them and then moved them up about 5.5 inches on the fender. So that also, that vehicle right there had a 2.5-inch lift and would clear, I think those were 37-inch pipples, but a 37-inch pipple is the same as a 39-inch BFG. So essentially that, with a 2.5-inch lift, would clear almost a 40-inch tire. Because not only is it a different front end, it's also considered a Highline kit. I really want to do it, like I'd love to get a Toyota Hilux or even one of the new Toyotas or something and do the same thing. Just build a custom Highline kit to put, one of these new trucks, put 37 or 40-inch tires with zero lift. I think it'd be really cool, but make it look like it's from the factory.
I think a Nissan Frontier would be really cool to do that with.
Yeah.
Oh, an old school Patrol? That'd be awesome. So you've done a lot of builds, a lot. We've talked about a handful of them. What's been your favorite build?
Aesthetically or as far as usability?
I think anything qualifies for this one. Your favorite?
Probably my personal favorite, still Frankenbrute. Because I built it I built it for exactly what my dream rig would be. It's built very strong. And if you see the different configurations of it, like the picture you showed earlier was the first configuration. And then when it went to SEMA in 2018 or 2017, I changed it to more of a bright blue color, and I built a flatbed for it. So it's actually got a tray back flatbed that has a recessed trunk in the middle of it for, it actually houses a 95 quart Dometic fridge. And then there's a lot of other storage built in it. And then I built a rack on top of that for a rooftop tent. But that thing just goes everywhere. It's really low, it's really long. So it's 123.5-inch wheelbase, where the Jeep that I started with was 96.4. So, you know, the frame is stretched a lot. So it's long and low, big tires, and I consider 37s a big tire. Almost no lift. So it's got, in that picture there, it's about an inch and a quarter lift, rock crawler, lift springs, and custom shocks for it. But with the engine and the horsepower, and I know it's a straight six because I refuse to put an LS in it. It's still a very mean straight six, you know, making 450 horse. But I can get in that and competently drive it from here to Florence, Oregon, to play in the sand dunes all day, and then go to Moab and wheel the gnarliest trails and still drive it home. It's just a bulletproof rig. If I had to change anything on it, I would have, when I built the original cab, I built it to the AEV Brute specs so that it could use an AEV top. I just then reshaped the top to be more of a bubble top, so it looked like an old 49 wheelies. If I were to build it again and make it perfect, I would add like 5 or 6 inches of cab so that I could recline the seat a little more when I need to take a nap. It's a very, very comfortable driving position, but you know, if you're driving across the country and you need to take a nap, you might as well just get out and lay underneath it. Or now that it has a rooftop tent, just open the tent. But yeah, you just can't recline far enough for really good comfort. So that's the only thing that I would change on that build. It just works.
We got
and
a
that was
couple
originally.
listeners. I was gonna say we got a couple listeners chiming in. One says he loves that rig, and another one says yes, you should build a Frontier.
Oh, I would love to build a Frontier. Send me it. Send it to me, and let's talk budget. I think it would be a blast to build one. But so that rig, when I originally built that, and you can find it, my son, I don't know if you guys have kids. I think I heard one of you guys say you did. So this is a bad story, but I always share it when I talk about Frankenbrute because it's part of the reason I built it. December 19th, 2011, I was working at AEB. At 6:03 in the morning, I dropped my son Liam off at daycare. At 11:43, I got the call that 911 had been called. When I got to the hospital, my son was, he had essentially passed away. They resuscitated him 4 times. He then spent the next month in a coma, and he came home paralyzed and blind. So he was a victim of shaken baby syndrome, which happens to approximately 65,000 kids a year in the US, but they use the HIPAA privacy laws to seal the records so parents don't know it happens because daycare is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So we fought with that for a couple years. And, you know, at the time I worked at AEV, I didn't go back into work for months. You know, I lived at the hospital and then we lived at the house. And then when I finally did start going back to work, AEV was great about it. You know, I started back at 2 days a week and then 3 days a week, and eventually got to 5 days a week, but I got to work from home too. So 2 years into that, I was talking with an off-road park here in Michigan called Rocks and Valleys, which is a really nice park. I was talking to the owner of that park. His name's Ron Price. And he said, hey, you know, why don't we do a fundraiser for your son? You know, because medical bills are pretty astronomical. And I said, yeah, that'd be a great idea. You know, when would be a good time? And he set a date for 3 months out. And the next day I was at work and I was talking with some of my colleagues. And one of them said, "Hey, you build some really cool Jeeps. Why don't you build a Jeep and raffle it off?" So I spent the next 3 or 4 days coming up with ideas, and talking to different people about rigs that I knew that were like partially done and whatnot. And eventually it came to the point I needed to buy a rig. It was about a week later, and I went to Davies Jeeps in Salem, Ohio, and bought a wrecked Wrangler. Like it had rolled end over end. It was destroyed. So I had less than 3 months to build a rig, and I ended up building Frankenbrute. And when I was done with, and a lot of industry partners and a lot of companies who I had worked with and who knew me, I called them and told them what I was doing, and we built that rig. So I built it right here in the shop after hours. So I'd go to work and I'd get off work at 5. I'd drive home and it'd be 6 o'clock, and I'd work all night long. And I built that rig in 3 months. And then for a year, I took it around all the big off-road shows in the country and sold raffle tickets. I was not a good marketer. I did not know how to market anything. So I just kind of let word of mouth do it because I didn't know how to social media. And I did pretty decent. We got the word out a lot about what happened to my son, which was the most important part. And we sold just over right about $50,000 worth of tickets. And so 1 year after I debuted it, we held a secondary event at Rocks and Valleys. And I let Liam, who's my son, he was 3 years old at the time. He drew the winning ticket out of a bucket, one of the little spinny raffle buckets. He drew the winning ticket out, and a girl who's in our industry, her name was Krista Robinson. She owned a company called Lifted Ladies, and Lifted Ladies did like off-road apparel for women. And she had been to a bunch of the shows with me. My son drew her name, so she was the winning ticket. And because at that point we had so many people while I was building it and showing it off, I had so many people that bought tickets say that they wouldn't take it. They weren't going to take the vehicle. And we're not handout people, right? I'm not a handout guy. So what we did is we took a certain percentage of the proceeds of all the ticket sales and I put them in an envelope. So there was several $1,000s in an envelope, and if you chose not to take the Jeep, you had to take the envelope. So you had to pick. And I didn't tell anybody what was in the envelope. It wasn't public knowledge, so that whoever took it didn't get taxed on it. But Krista and her husband were right there. His name's Brandon. And they decided in about 20 seconds that they were going to give the Jeep to my son Liam, so that we would continue using it to raise awareness for shaken baby syndrome. And I forced the envelope onto her, which was just a phenomenal thing. It was really cool. And that's why every year I keep changing Frankenbrute and keep bringing it to all these events. Because on the back it says, it's got his website, which is babyliam.org. And the back window says Stop Shaken Baby Syndrome. But every time I get a chance to talk about it and show people, and anytime I can get people to go to my son's website, babyliam.org, they can read what happened to him. So, and it's not written as a woe is me or it's not written as a bad thing. It's written as a chronological story. So my wife and I were both engineers. So almost 2 years of his life are documented in that website, and it's his story. So it's everything that he went through after his injury and how he, the changes that he made and the progression that he did. So in the event that your child has a TBI, whether it's from a stupid mistake that somebody made at daycare or, they fell off their bike and they got a TBI, we want to give hope. And we want to show that if you work hard enough, you can make some form of a change. Now, my son will be disabled for the rest of his life. He lost, close to 30% of his brain. So, developmentally, he's delayed. But he's walking and talking and going to school and playing, and he started riding a bike last year. You know, when we left the hospital after his injury, they told us that, like, literally the head neurosurgeon of the hospital said, he's going to be a vegetable for the rest of his life. Just feed him. And we wouldn't take that as an answer, you know? So
No.
we talked to as many doctors as we could, and we went to different specialists all over the state. And, you know, we just did everything we could. And from all the research we could do online and everything else, we did physical therapy and speech therapy and occupational therapy. You know, before he was even supposed to be able to walk, we were doing this stuff. And almost 10 years later, he's walking and talking and playing. And, you know, we know he's going to have problems later in life, but that was the whole premise behind Frankenberg, was to get the word out and raise awareness for shaken baby syndrome and for traumatic brain injuries. It's not a, I'm mad at the girl that I know did it, that lives up the street. And it's not a woe is me, you know, oh, my kid got hurt, please give me money. Because you see too much of that, you know, I mean, you just see it everywhere. And we wanted to educate people more. And I figured if I built this really cool Jeep, I could educate a lot of people, and somebody would end up with a really cool Jeep. Fortunately, my son ended up with a really cool Jeep, so it's his. And when he's older, he can decide if he wants to drive it. I would put a small engine back in it, but if he gets older and he's able to drive it, it's his. Or if he's older and he wants to sell it, he can sell it. It's his car. But from now until he can make that decision, I will continue to improve it and make it nicer and better, and keep it relevant in this off-road world so that I can share his story.
You know, I gotta say that went from a wow, that's so sad, to inspiring. I mean, literally, that Jeep can you be used to help inspire parents with the shaken baby syndrome going on?
Well, and that was the purpose, you know. I mean, in the beginning, that was our original purpose. It was, can we use it to help our son a little bit, and maybe, you know, dig ourselves out of this $500,000 in medical bills. But as soon as I started selling tickets and realized that I had no clue on how to market a $200,000 vehicle, that it was much better to just use it to raise awareness and help other people who are going through the same thing. And surprisingly, the funnest part, you know, it's been in a bunch of magazines. It was on the cover of Four Wheeler. It was on the cover of JP. It was, you know, it's been on some TV shows. Ian Johnson had it on his show. It got a lot of attention. And that little website, which somebody who knows computers, because I don't know computers, I'm bad at it. That website was built by somebody in our off-road industry. They offered to do it on the side. They built that website and they host it and keep it going. You know, we pay for it, but that website has had millions and millions of views, which means if out of the, and I haven't looked at it in a couple months, but if 10 million people have read my son's story, if I've prevented one kid from getting hurt, it's worth it. If I've helped one or two kids recover a little bit from my son's story, it's worth it. You know, and financially, it's not worth it. Nothing like that's ever worth it, right? But in the end, it's about helping somebody else and trying to help another kid. You know, once we learned that shaken baby syndrome happens so much, it's really disgusting, and it really messes with you. So if there's anything we can do to prevent it, because I understand, as much as I'm upset with the girl that ruined my son's life, she didn't do it out of malice. She wasn't doing it intentionally. She wasn't, you know, vindictively trying to hurt my son. She was uneducated, because they don't have to have education. She was uneducated, and we've learned that it's a learned behavior in daycare systems. If they pick a baby up and they cradle the head just right, and they just give it a little shake, it'll go to sleep. So it's a learned behavior, because that little shake creates a concussion, right? Because their brain is so much smaller in the skull. So it'll put a baby to sleep. So if they've got a bunch of babies and somebody has taught them this, they don't think they're hurting him, because my son, when they did the first few MRIs, the blood on the brain changes color the longer that it's on the brain, right? So concussion, when you do an MRI, it's like white and then gray and then light gray, and then, it changes color over time. And my son had at least 4 or 5 different injuries spanning a couple weeks. So somebody had been doing that to put him to sleep, is our guess, right? That's the hypothesis. Because the girl that did it, her story changed 3 times, but she never admitted to doing it. So in the end, basically, she didn't do it on purpose, or she didn't do it knowing the outcome, because she was uneducated. So if the pain that we've gone through and the pain that my son's gone through, if we can use that as a learning tool for other people to prevent this from happening, it's well worth it. And in the end, it's a badass rig.
Yep, absolutely. Well, this next question, I wrote it before hearing this story, so I was going to ask you what is inspired to make some of the custom rigs you've built. Clearly, the shaken baby syndrome inspired you to build Frankenbrute and things like that. What else motivates you or inspires you to build these custom one-off rigs, or the homage that you pay to the old Wagoneers and things like that?
Well, I mean, really, there's just a couple of reasons behind it. If you look at the most popular one-off rigs, the most popular rigs that Jeep builds or anybody builds and shows off at Easter Jeep Safari or SEMA, the ones that get the very most amount of attention are throwback rigs. Because when we were young, all of us, when we were young, the rigs that we grew up with were the ones that we wanted when we saw them in magazines and on TV. Now we're older, and the new rigs, yeah, they might, I mean, honestly, they might work better than the old ones. They might have way more creature comforts. But the thing that makes all of us tick is the stuff that we grew up with. So
Absolutely.
If you can take a modern rig with all its modern bells and whistles and frills and computer crap, and backup cameras and heated seats and steering wheels and all the foo-foo stuff, you can take a modern rig with all that garbage and make it look like what you grew up with and what you wanted when you were a kid. It's going to make people look at it. So I conveniently have a little skill set, and I'm pretty good with my hands, and I'm pretty good at blending things. I can kind of see it in my head before I even start. So, like Pathkiller, when I did Pathkiller, it was literally a budding company. So it was a smaller company that was building this top. And the top was called My Top. And they asked me, they're like, hey, can you build something that's going to that will make people walk into my booth? Because they were having a booth at SEMA. And I told them flat out, I was like, if you give me 100% creative control, you don't ask me about anything that goes on the rig, I will build you a rig that will get everybody in your booth. And they did. They gave me full creative control. So there wasn't anybody puppeteering or telling me I had to put this or that on it. And I built that rig, and it did. I think 5 or 6 magazines all put it in the top 10 best Jeeps at SEMA. And some of them even said it was the best Jeep at SEMA. And it went really viral. Like the first photo of that hit the internet, it had like 20 million views in less than 24 hours.
Wow.
So it did really good. And then some of the other ones, the yellow one, same thing. It was a company asked me if I would build something, because there's that fiberglass front end that some people have done. Even Chairflex had one. They asked me if I would make it better. They said, hey, can you do this, but do it better and make it fit the vehicle and not look goofy? Then I said, yeah, I'll do it. But, I want full creative control on the front end. And they did. They gave me full creative control. So I did that front end. And then they threw in the extra stuff. Well, they wanted this lift and this tires and wheels. And on the interior of that, they put this god-awful, ugly brown leather seats that did not fit. And they had to put the giant Alpine radio, which didn't fit the build. But luckily the windows were tinted. You didn't see that crap.
That's it's funny. I've never seen the inside of that rig. All I've ever seen is the outside.
Right.
And I understand.
Well, and there's very few photos of that rig. I probably have 100, 150 photos of it being built, and then another like 40 photos when I did final assembly. But I built that rig and I delivered it to the Off-Road Expo the Unlimited Off-Road Expo in Louisville, Kentucky. And when I delivered it, they showed it off for the show. I even parked it on Kenny Hawk's rig. And at the end of the show, the company I built that for had us take the front end off and put it in a box. We took the front end off, we put it in a box. They shipped it to Germany. They put it on a Jeep in Germany and ran it down a drag strip. And then they 3D scanned it because they were going to manufacture it. And then they decided they weren't going to manufacture it. So the parts got shipped back. They got shipped to California. It was reassembled on the rig. And one marketing guy from that company drove it around for the summer. But I think there was less than 5 photos that ever went on the internet. So, that rig, not many people have seen it. And then they sold the rig. So they took the front end off, put it back in a box, and it's sitting on a shelf in California. So anybody could buy that front end and just bolt it onto a JK and have that look, but nobody really knows it exists. Same thing like the Quadratech one, the YJL. They had me build that last year, and it was supposed to be ready for SEMA, and then SEMA didn't happen. So it was, they had it in Pennsylvania for a little bit, and then they shipped it here, and I brought it to Easter Jeep Safari, and they showed it off at Easter Jeep Safari, and then I brought it back here, and I've been waiting since, I think we ordered most of the parts in February, but I've been waiting for the parts to get it ready for SEMA, and they're still not here yet. And that one, I'm going to take it all the way down to the frame and redo it to get it ready for SEMA this year. But that one, I asked for 100% creative control, and they gave it to me. But then they took it away from me at the end too, and they put a couple things on it that they wanted or their partners wanted. Like the suspension on it's too tall. Luckily, and it is a TerraFlex long arm. Luckily, TerraFlex, Jeremy over there sent me some new springs, so I'm going to drop it a little bit so it's not so tall. And then, a couple of the other things. The original rendering for that had a different fender, but they wanted aftermarket fenders that they sell instead of what I was going to put on it. But I do get some pretty good creative control on stage 2, which will be everything from the frame up that's underneath the body. We're going to change a little bit of the interior too, but it'll be pretty epic. I think it'll make a lot of attention at SEMA. And it'll have a little tiny bit more horsepower than I had with the factory.
Is it going to be teal?
No, I'm not changing the color. So the color of that is, that's the original 1989 Sahara Tan, because Quadratech was started on a Sahara Tan 1989 YJ. So the color's going to stay the same, just the heartbeat's going to change a lot.
Gotcha.
We're going to go way back to 1989 with what's under the hood.
Teal was just a very late 80s, early 90s color. That's why I was wondering.
Oh, okay.
Well, Greg, where can Jeremy.
So you mentioned you had a pretty good relationship with Power Tank. Who are some of the other companies that you guys work with a lot?
Oh boy. So I tend to work with products that I respect, right? So and I know this isn't the best thing to say, especially as a company, but I won't use junk. I just won't use it. I have a reputation. My builds have a reputation. So I work with a lot of companies. I put stuff on a lot of rigs. Like you'll notice if you look at every rig that I built, They used to all have super winches on them because the super winch Talon was a phenomenal winch. Super winch came out with that EXP and got a lot of egg on their face. But super winch, I really like the super winch Talon. I don't like really one of the other ones. Love the super winch Talon. Warren, I've done a few things with Warren, just not a lot. But I really respect Warren. They make a phenomenal winch. So I don't pigeonhole one brand either, right? You know, so super winch Talon's a great winch, but Warren makes great winches too. I've done some stuff, you know, BFG, Pipple tires, Factor 55, ASR. ASR is a phenomenal recovery gear company that's up in the Seattle area. They actually make, and a lot of people don't know this, but ASR is kind of like the base. They make the gear for a lot of companies. So I use ASR a lot. Quadratech, let me think. Advanced adapters, Tom Woods drive shafts. I pretty much exclusively use Tom Woods drive shafts. There's other drive shafts out there that are great, like JE Reel. I love Jim. He's a great guy, and he makes great products. But I use Tom Wood drive shafts pretty exclusively. One, they're one of the first custom drive shafts I ever built. Two, I've been to the place. I know the people. I've never had an issue. And something that they don't really advertise, if you buy a Tom Woods drive shaft for your Toyota, and then you swap in a different powertrain and different axles, you can take that drive shaft out and ship it back to them, and they will retrofit it to fit your new rig, you know, or your new powertrain, and the charge is minuscule. So you can start off with just this really nice drive shaft that has 1310s in it, and then later you put 60s in it and you need 1350s, and you ship them the drive shaft, and for like less than $100, they'll rebuild the drive shaft and rebuild the ends and put 1350s in it and ship it back to you. So it's not something they really advertise because they probably want to sell multiple drive shafts, but the guys there are phenomenal. Sean Wood and Tom, his dad, they're just great people. So I use their drive shafts a lot, and I really, really love the guys over there. Who's some other good ones? Casey Highlights. Know a lot of the guys over there. Really like their stuff. Baja Designs. Friends with some of the guys there. Use their stuff. Dirty Life Wheels. Hutchinson Beadlocks. Barnes 4-wheel drive makes some phenomenal brackets. You know, if you're doing custom suspension or other stuff, they just make a lot of wicked stuff. Generate makes some cool stuff. I deal with Tony occasionally on some of the builds. JCR, they're local Michigan guys, and they're really good dudes. Daryl and, you know, all the guys down there, they're great. And their brand isn't just stuck to a Jeep, right? They make stuff for other brands too. And it's 100% US made right there in their building. You know, they just got this cool new laser and some other stuff. You know, they make everything in-house. So you might have a longer lead time, but it's made right in Michigan, by in Michigan, and, you know, by an American, with American products and American people. You know, so there's just so many good companies. I mean, really, it's hard to narrow it down to some of the best, but there's just some really good companies with really great product. You know, the off-road industry is a, what, $30-40 billion a year industry. But there's also stuff out in our industry that you couldn't pay me to put it on somebody's car, right? And it wouldn't matter if it was a Toyota or a 4Runner or a Jeep. It wouldn't matter. You know, there's stuff that I wouldn't put on. You couldn't pay me enough money. I don't know. That's another long answer. I could keep going, but I'm trying to keep them shorter.
Oh no, we appreciate the content. Well, we're wrapping it up here, but we need to know, well, we know where to find you, but where can our listeners find you?
So I'm not the best at social media. I'll say it right up. I'm literally usually a one-man show. I have a couple guys that come in and help, and my 16-year-old son has actually been helping this summer, but he still doesn't have access to the social media. But your listeners and anybody that's looking for me, Unofficial Use Only has a Facebook. I also have a YouTube channel, which isn't the best because I don't edit real well. So sometimes other people edit videos for me and I put them up. So I have a YouTube, which is Unofficial Use Only. I have a Facebook, which is Unofficial Use Only. I have an Instagram, which is Unofficial Use Only. And then aside from that, it's just Greg Henderson. I have a Instagram that's Henderson Greg, which is personal. I've got a Facebook, which is Greg Henderson, which is, my personal. But because I'm a small business and I'm, kind of mostly just a one-man show, I don't care if somebody hits me direct or, on my business social media, it doesn't matter. It's all the same person. I control it. I don't have minions. So, anywhere. I'm also a member of a media outlet called Gone Jeepin', which is Gone-GPN. And it is built of a bunch of people that you guys, a lot of your listeners probably know. Rick Payway, Stuart Bourdine, Chris Collard, Liam Lafferty, Michael Harrington, Tracy Clark. These are all people that were part of the magazine scene, right? So Rick Payway was the editor-in-chief of JP Magazine, and he worked for Four Wheeler, and Chris Collard did. So all these guys worked for that. And when Motor Trend bought all the magazines and essentially, for the most part, closed them down, a group of people started Gone Jeepin' as a way to continue sharing content.
Awesome.
So on that, we've got a podcast, which I think we just did our 13th episode. We do one like every 2 weeks. And then they've got a YouTube and Facebook and an Instagram and all that, but it's Gone-GPN for Gone Jeepin'. So I'm also a member of that. And it's just fun. It's a way to just share what we do. Same like this. I was inadvertently, and I know I've liked the podcast for a while. I hadn't watched it because I'm usually doing stuff. I don't pay attention. If I put my earbuds in, I'll listen as I work. But what was it? A couple of weeks ago, or last week, I was flipping through Facebook and I saw the podcast and I watched for the bitter end of it. And I was like, oh, this is great. These guys are talking. They're real. It didn't look like you were just trying to promote for money. You guys were having a conversation. And it was a wheel dude, and you guys were talking about wheels. So I just threw out a fishing line, and I was like, tell me why scrub radius is important, because I know why, but a lot of people don't. And you guys started talking about it, and I was like, this is a really good podcast. So after the podcast, you guys reached out and we chatted just a little tiny bit and asked if I'd want to be on the show, and I'm like, yeah, anytime that we can share this off-road industry with people who are in it and people who want to be in it and new people, when we can share our loves and likes and ideas and our passion for what we do, it's worth it. So yeah, it's almost midnight here in Michigan right now. And honestly, when we're done, I still have a Dana 60 to put in that Jeep before I go to bed tonight.
No.
So, but it's, conveniently, the commute from my shop to my house is 212 feet. So, that's nice because I get to spend a lot of time with my family and kids throughout the day and everything else. And usually from 9 p.m. till about 2 a.m., I'm the most efficient. I get the most work done because my phone doesn't ring, nobody bugs me. But to be able to step onto a kick-ass podcast like this and talk to you guys and talk about off-roading and the stuff we do, it's worth the break. Because anytime we can help anybody else, if any of the stuff I said, helps anybody, it's worth it. Like my YouTube, I've got some informative videos, about tire pressure and other things that I just put out there to try and educate some people. Some of it's fun, some of you try and do fun stuff, but again, I don't publish a lot on my social media platforms because I'm doing stuff like this. I'm usually not stopping.
Absolutely.
Same thing like this car. which I showed you briefly at the beginning. But that thing, if I get out of the way, it's a customer who he inherited this car last year. It's got 30,000 original miles, and that's the original paint. It's never been touched up. It's never been repainted. And that is an original 1968 426 Hemi drag pack Charger.
Oh my goodness.
It's, I don't know, probably close to somewhere between 600 and 800 horsepower. It is an absolute blast, and it's a ripper. But that being a drag pack with a VIN, it's probably somewhere between, conservatively, it was appraised at $3 million. So I think it would probably sell for 1.5 at Barrett Jackson. But I get to drive that tomorrow. So I'm not just about Jeeps, right? I just redid the coolant system and a few other things so that they can take it to the Woodward Dream Cruise. But, I get to play with lots of stuff. So I enjoy it and I have fun. But yeah, as soon as we're done, I'm going to throw in another 60 today before I go inside. But no, I'm honored that you guys asked me to be on the podcast. And dude, anytime. You got questions, you want me on for 2 minutes or 10 minutes, it doesn't matter to me. I love what you're doing. I've watched a multitude of your podcasts since last week, or I've listened to a bunch of them. You guys are knocking it out of the park. Good job.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Greg.
That is a high compliment. I've been stalking you on social media. I think I friended you like a year or two ago to get you on the podcast, and I'm just so ADD. And then you commented, I'm like, is it that Greg Henderson? Yes, I want you on. So yeah. It's I'm still wondering who gets paid for podcasting, but
Yeah, exactly.
I know a few people that get paid. I know a few people that get paid really well for podcasting, but same with YouTube. I know YouTubers that make $40,000 every 2 weeks. But do I have the time to edit? What, do I even know how to edit a video? No. Have the time to do that? I mean, with the stuff that I do, tomorrow I'm going to be running that at probably 150 miles an hour. I could make a great YouTube video. Am I gonna? No. So I know guys that do it, and that's their forte. My forte is making them right and making them run right and making them look cool. And I love doing it. So I'm just going to keep doing it. But yeah, dude, anytime. If you want me on your show, just hit me up. And if you want some other people, I'm friends with a lot of people in the industry. If there's somebody that you don't know that you might need an introduction to, just let me know.
Great. Well, we want to thank you, Greg, for coming on, and thank the listeners who are still clinging on to the bitter end of this episode. Really appreciate you guys out there. We appreciate your willingness to listen to us talk for so long. And if you guys out there have any guest suggestions that you want us to have on, hit us up. Let us know. We really appreciate you guys. Please share us with your friends to help our podcast grow a little more. And God bless America.
Don't forget to visit Patriot Patch and join the Patch of the Month Club. Check out our Gaia affiliate link for up to 40% off. Also, don't forget to head over to Warren and Power Tank to see all of their great gear. We are a proud part of the Firearms Radio Network. Got a question or comment? Send it to us through our webpage at firearmsradio.tv or through our social media channels by searching for Off-Road Podcast. Also, you can listen to us live at overlandradio.com, Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. When off-road, please remember to have fun, tread lightly, be safe and courteous, and thanks for listening